I remember reading about the woman in Colorado. She dismissed the warnings about mountain lions before her morning run. It's a story that stayed with me. She thought her neighborhood streets were safe enough, even with the drought driving animals closer to human settlements. But sometimes the most familiar places can hold unexpected dangers. It was October 7th, 2016. The affluent Wildwood Heights neighborhood in Boulder, Colorado was still and dark. This upscale residential area, only 5 years old, sat right on the edge of the Rocky Mountain foothills with winding streets and modern homes backing onto open space. Lisa Hartwell, a 33-year-old marketing coordinator, was starting her daily 5 a.m. jog through these carefully planned streets. Lisa had moved here 2 years earlier, drawn by the promise of mountain living combined with urban convenience. She was a dedicated fitness enthusiast, keeping to a strict exercise schedule despite her demanding job. Her morning routine had become sacred, a time to clear her mind while enjoying the crisp mountain air and those stunning views of the Front Range. That autumn had been unusually dry, with drought conditions lasting longer than expected. Wildlife officials had warned about increased animal activity in residential areas. Deer, elk, and their predators were being forced to search for water closer to where people lived. There had been several mountain lion sightings reported in the past month, including tracks in backyards and a large cat seen near the community's retention pond. Lisa had heard these warnings but dismissed them as typical for mountain living in Colorado. She continued her runs without changing her route or carrying anything for protection, confident that her neighborhood was safe. Mountain lions, also known as cougars or pumas, are North America's second-largest wildcat species. Adult males can weigh between 115 and 220 pounds. These powerful predators are perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain. They possess incredible stealth, speed, and jumping ability, able to leap vertically up to 15 feet and horizontally up to 45 feet. They are primarily ambush hunters, relying on surprise attacks, typically targeting the neck and spine of their prey to deliver quick, fatal bites. As Lisa jogged through the pre-dawn darkness, she was completely unaware that a 140-pound male mountain lion had been stalking a mule deer through the drainage culvert, running beneath the street she was approaching. Lisa's approach disrupted the hunt, startling both the deer and the mountain lion. The deer bolted across the street and disappeared into the darkness, leaving the frustrated predator crouched in the shadows of the concrete drainage opening. The attack happened without warning. As Lisa passed within 10 feet of the culvert, the mountain lion exploded from the shadows with incredible speed, covering the distance in a single leap. His massive front paws struck Lisa between the shoulder blades with devastating force, sending her crashing face first onto the asphalt. His weight drove her to the ground. Lisa's attempts to scream were cut short as the mountain lion's powerful jaws clamped down on the back of her neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae with crushing force. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Lisa's back and shoulders, each swipe opening deep gashes that severed major blood vessels and caused massive tissue damage. The 140-pound cat used his incredible strength to pull Lisa's body across the asphalt and down into the concrete culvert. where the darkness and confined space would provide protection while he fed. Lisa's body was recovered 3 hours later by a joint team of police officers and Colorado Parks and Wildlife personnel. The mountain lion had abandoned his kill when the search teams approached, retreating further into the drainage network that connected to the natural creek system beyond the neighborhood. Lisa had died from massive trauma to her neck and spine. The mountain lion's killing bite proved instantly fatal. The investigation revealed that Lisa had been jogging along her usual route when she inadvertently interrupted the mountain lion's hunt, triggering the attack that cost her life. The mountain lion was tracked and euthanized the following day, after being located in the foothills above the neighborhood. Then there was Felicity Grant, who arrived at Boulder County Open Space in Colorado on August 19, 2017. This vast wilderness area is known for its rugged terrain and diverse wildlife population. The mountainous region stretches across thousands of acres of dense forest and winding trails, attracting outdoor enthusiasts. But these same wilderness areas also serve as prime habitat for mountain lions and other dangerous predators. Felicity Grant, a 39-year-old fitness influencer from Denver with over 5,000 social media followers, had planned what she called her ultimate wilderness transformation experience. Known for her entitled attitude and belief that her athletic superiority made her exempt from rules, she had already caused multiple confrontations at the park entrance. Her demanding personality became evident when she berated the teenage park attendant for suggesting she read safety guidelines, claiming someone of her fitness level didn't need advice from minimum wage employees. Park Ranger Tom Bradley had attempted to brief Felicity on recent mountain lion activity during her permit application process. The area had experienced multiple cougar sightings over the previous month, including aggressive encounters that resulted in temporary trail close. Felicity became increasingly hostile, interrupting Tom repeatedly. "There's a case that haunts me, a chilling example of how arrogance and ignorance can turn a wilderness encounter into a deadly tragedy. I'm thinking of Felicity, the influencer who chose the Rabbit Ears Pass Trail for a dawn run, ignoring the closigns and warnings about mountain lions. She even tore down notices declaring that taxpayers like her had a right to use public trails. Mountain lions are apex predators, perfectly adapted for hunting in mountainous terrain, and this one was about to prove just how deadly they could be. Felicity started her run at 5:30 a.m., wanting to avoid other hikers. She wore noise-canceling headphones, blasting electronic music, and carried raw steaks in her backpack for a post-workout meal. The combination of her erratic running, heavy breathing, and the smell of fresh meat created the perfect conditions to attract a hunter. A 140-pound male mountain lion, already hunting in the area, detected the scent of meat from over a mile away and began tracking her. He stalked her along the ridge, using rocks and trees to remain hidden. As Felicity rounded a bend, the mountain lion positioned itself on a boulder about 15 feet above the path. Completely unaware because of the music and her belief in her own invulnerability, Felicity passed below, and the mountain lion launched its attack. The predator struck from behind with tremendous force, claws raking down her back, while its front paws wrapped around her shoulders and neck. The lion's canine teeth clamped down on the back of her neck with deadly precision, severing her spinal cord. The mountain lion killed her with a technique that targeted the cervical vertebrae. His jaws applied crushing press, instantly paralyzing her. The cougar maintained his grip, claws digging deeper, causing massive blood loss and suffocation. Within 2 minutes, Felicity was dead. The mountain lion then dragged her body off the trail to feed. Her body was discovered 3 days later by a search and rescue team. The location and condition of the remains confirmed a mountain lion attack. Then, there's the story of Jennifer Walsh on December 3, 2014. The fluorescent lights of the county animal shelter cast shadows across the kennels. Jennifer, a 25-year-old veterinary student, moved between the cages. She believed every animal deserved a second chance, and as a weekend volunteer, she was known for advocating for the shelter's most difficult cases, the aggressive ones marked with red cards scheduled for euthanization. The dog that would cost Jennifer her life was Diesel, a 75-pound pit bull with a scarred muzzle and eyes that seemed to hold years of rage. He'd been surrendered after multiple bite incidents, including a severe attack on a neighbor's child. The behavioral assessment was clear: too dangerous for adoption. Jennifer had been watching Diesel for 3 days, looking for a sign of gentleness beneath his aggressive exterior. She saw him pace, growl, and destroy his toys, but she also noticed moments of what she interpreted as vulnerability, when he pressed against the back wall, softening when he thought no one was watching. Shelter protocol was clear. Dogs like Diesel were never to be handled alone. But Jennifer believed his aggression was fear-based and that he needed one-on-one attention. On that December afternoon, with the staff busy, Jennifer made the decision that would cost her her life. She approached Diesel. "I keep thinking about Jennifer, the young woman who dreamed of saving animals." It ended in the most brutal way imaginable, a stark reminder that good intentions aren't always enough. Some creatures, no matter how much care they receive, remain dangerous. I've read the details of the incident countless times. Jennifer was preparing Diesel, a 75-pound dog, for a behavioral evaluation. He was in his kennel, and she approached with a slip lead and the key to the isolation room. Diesel's reaction was immediate. His lips pulled back, revealing his teeth. The hair rose along his neck, and a growl rumbled from his chest. But Jennifer tragically misinterpreted these signs, seeing fear where there was aggression. When she opened the kennel door, Diesel seemed to shift, calculating her position. This hesitation gave her the confidence to slip the lead around his neck and guide him toward the isolation room. It was a small, windowless space, only 8 by 10 feet, with concrete walls and a single metal folding chair. Once inside, Jennifer closed the door and removed the lead, thinking it would help him relax. But Diesel stood rigid, his eyes fixed on her. She sat down and began to speak to him gently, unaware that she was being assessed by a predator. The attack came when she stood and took a step toward him, her hand extended in what she thought was a peaceful gesture. To Diesel, it was a threat. He launched himself across the room, his jaws targeting her throat. Her scream was cut short as his teeth sank into her neck, crushing her windpipe and severing major blood vessels. His jaws locked with mechanical efficiency. Jennifer clawed at the dog's head, but Diesel had been bred for combat. His grip was unbreakable. His powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone. Blood sprayed across the concrete walls as Jennifer's struggles weakened. The attack was swift and brutal. Other volunteers heard her scream and rushed to the door, but it was locked from the inside. By the time they got the key and entered, Jennifer was lying motionless on the floor, her life draining away in a pool of blood. Diesel stood over her, his muzzle stained red, his eyes still burning with aggression. Paramedics arrived quickly, but it was too late. Jennifer was pronounced dead at the scene. Diesel was immediately sedated and euthanized. The investigation revealed that Jennifer had violated multiple safety protocols, ignoring clear warning signs. The shelter implemented new security measures, and her death became a cautionary tale in veterinary schools. Her family established a scholarship in her name, but for students studying wildlife conservation, a final acknowledgement that some animals, despite all the love in the world, remain fundamentally dangerous. I remember reading about another incident that shook me deeply. It was April 17, 2018 in Florida, at a place called Sunshine Primate Sanctuary. It claimed to rescue primates, but it was really exploiting them for tourist photos. The property housed over 30 primates in substandard conditions, generating revenue through photo sessions. A 31-year-old veterinary technician named Jessica Rodriguez visited the facility with her husband, believing it was a legitimate conservation effort. She had always been passionate about animal welfare, documenting animal care and recovery through photos. Her passion had driven her to pursue her veterinary technology degree, working nights to support herself. She had dedicated her career to animal welfare, volunteering at legitimate sanctuaries and supporting organizations working to protect great apes in the wild. She genuinely believed that her visit to Sunshine Primate Sanctuary would help promote conservation efforts through the photos she planned to take. That afternoon, Jessica was participating in what the facility called an educational encounter with King, a 350-pound silverback gorilla who had been acquired from a defunct research facility. The sanctuary's safety measures were minimal. A chain-link barrier separating visitors from the gorilla's enclave, with no additional protection or supervision from qualified staff. Silverback gorillas are incredibly powerful. Adult males can weigh up to 400 pounds and possess the strength of 10 grown men. They're intelligent and emotionally complex, but also territorial and aggressive when they perceive threats. It's easy to forget the sheer power contained within a gorilla's frame. They communicate through complex body language and vocalizations and can shift from calm to violent behavior within seconds. I've read accounts of their massive hands describing the crushing force they can exert. Their powerful jaws, too, are lined with sharp canine teeth capable of inflicting severe wounds. I recall a particularly tragic case involving a woman named Jessica. she approached a gorilla enclave, camera in hand, hoping to capture images that would convey the animal's intelligence and emotional depth. The gorilla, named King, appeared calm, sitting near the fence, his massive frame relaxed as he observed the human visitors with what seemed like curiosity. Jessica began photographing him, excited about the conservation message she believed she could share through these intimate portraits. But then came the moment she decided to reach through the fence to touch King. She believed physical contact would create a more powerful image for her conservation advocacy. She had observed the gorilla's calm demeanor and interpreted it as friendliness, rather than the calculated patience of a territorial animal assessing potential threats. King's reaction was instantaneous and devastating. The moment Jessica's hand passed through the barrier, the 350-pound silverback grabbed her arm with crushing strength and pulled her against the chain-link fencing. Jessica's scream of shock and pain filled the facility as King's grip tightened with bone-crushing force. Carlos and other visitors tried desperately to free Jessica from King's grasp, but the gorilla's strength was far beyond human capability to overcome. King's massive hand maintained its crushing grip on Jessica's arm, while his other hand reached through the barrier to grab her head and shoulders, pulling her harder against the inadequate fencing. The silverback's territorial instincts drove him to continue the assault. His powerful hands inflicted devastating trauma to Jessica's head, neck, and arms while she remained trapped against the barrier. Jessica's attempts to break free only seemed to increase King's aggressive behavior, as he interpreted her struggles as continued threats to his territory. Jessica's movements grew weaker as massive blood loss and crushing injuries overwhelmed her body. King's grip never loosened as he continued to pull her against the barrier, his territorial fury focused entirely on eliminating what he perceived as an intrusion into his domain. Within minutes, Jessica's struggle ceased as King's brutal assault proved fatal. The massive gorilla maintained his grip on her lifeless form while displaying threatening behavior toward anyone who approached the enclave. Emergency responders arrived with tranquilizer equipment, but Jessica was already dead from massive trauma. The subsequent investigation revealed that the Sunshine Primate Sanctuary had been operating as an illegal roadside zoo, exploiting both animals and visitors for profit, all while providing inadequate safety, means, and animal care. The facility was immediately raided and shut down by state authorities, with all primates relocated to legitimate sanctuaries. King was transferred to an accredited facility with proper containment and enrichment programs, where he could live out his remaining years in conditions appropriate for his species. Jessica's death prompted enhanced regulations for facilities claiming to operate as animal sanctuaries and stricter enforcement of existing wildlife protection laws. Jessica's family established a foundation supporting legitimate primate conservation efforts, ensuring that her genuine passion for animal welfare would continue through organizations that truly protected great apes rather than exploiting them for profit. Then there's the story from March 18, 2017. In the upscale Asheville, North Carolina neighborhood of Mountain View Estates, the first warm evening of spring was unfolding. The residential development built on the slopes of the Blue Ridge Mountains featured large lots with mature trees and natural landscaping that blended seamlessly with the surrounding forest. Maria Santos, a 41-year-old single mother and part-time dog walker, was making her evening rounds through the neighborhood's winding streets, caring for the pets of wealthy residents who relied on her services. Maria had been working as a professional dog walker for 3 years, building a loyal clientele among Mountain View Estates' affluent homeowners who appreciated her reliability and genuine love of animals. She often walked multiple dogs simultaneously, managing up to 6 animals at once while maintaining perfect control and ensuring each pet received individual attention. Maria's income from dog walking helped supplement her day job at a local veterinary clinic, allowing her to support her teenage daughter as a single parent. The Mountain View Estates development had been carved out of pristine mountain forest, with builders required to preserve mature trees and maintain natural wildlife corridors throughout the community. Recent construction of additional homes had disrupted established animal movement patterns, forcing bears, deer, and other wildlife to seek new routes through residential areas. The North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission had issued warnings about increased bear activity in mountain communities, particularly as animals emerged from winter hibernation. Maria was aware of the wildlife warnings, but had never encountered any dangerous animals during her 3 years of walking dogs in the neighborhood. She carried pepper spray as a precaution and had received training on wildlife encounters from the local animal control office. On this particular evening, she was walking 3 large dogs, 2 German Shepherds and a Golden Retriever, along the community's main street when she noticed unusual activity near a row of garbage cans. Black bears are North America's most common bear species, with adult females typically weighing between 200 and 400 pounds. Mother bears with cubs are extremely protective and will attack any perceived threat to their offspring. Bears have an excellent sense of smell, and that often draws them right into residential areas. It's the garbage, the pet food, all the easy attractants. And when they're surprised or cornered, well, they can run up to 35 miles per hour. I've read reports of their strength. They can break down doors, overturn cars. Their claws and teeth, they can inflict devastating injuries, especially if you threaten their cubs or their territory. I remember reading about Maria, who approached an intersection one morning where several garbage cans had been placed for pickup. She came upon a 300-pound female black bear with 2 cubs, and they were rummaging through the containers. The mother bear had torn open bags feeding on discarded food while her cubs played nearby. Maria knew the danger immediately, and she started backing away, slowly. But the 3 dogs she was walking became agitated, barking aggressively at the bears. That triggered the mother bear's protective instincts. She perceived the barking as a direct threat to her cubs. She rose to her full height, began making aggressive vocalizations, positioning herself between the dogs and her offspring. Maria tried to control the excited animals to retreat to a safe distance, but the dogs kept barking, kept lunging, and that only escalated the situation. The 300-pound mother bear charged toward Maria and the dogs with explosive speed, covering the 30 yards between them in just seconds. Maria tried to run while holding 3 leashes, but she became entangled, fell hard onto the asphalt street. The dogs scattered, leaving Maria vulnerable, unable to escape as the enraged bear approached. The mother bear's massive paws struck Maria's back and shoulders with bone-crushing force, driving her face first into the pavement, her weight pinning Maria to the ground. The bear's powerful jaws clamped down on Maria's head and neck, teeth puncturing through skull bone, severing vital arteries. Maria's attempts to protect herself were useless against an animal with so much more strength. The bear's razor-sharp claws raked across Maria's torso and limbs, each swipe opening deep gashes, causing massive blood loss and tissue damage. The mother bear's attack was methodical, brutal, driven by maternal instincts to eliminate any threat to her cubs. Maria's struggles grew weaker as trauma and blood loss overwhelmed her. Residents in nearby homes heard the commotion, called 911 while trying to scare the bear away with loud noises and bright lights. The mother bear eventually retreated with her cubs toward the forest, leaving Maria motionless on the street. Paramedics arrived within minutes, but they couldn't save her. Maria had died from massive head and neck trauma. The investigation revealed that improperly secured garbage containers had attracted the mother bear and her cubs to the residential area, creating the conditions for the fatal encounter. Wildlife officials determined that the bear had been acting defensively, protecting her offspring, and wasn't exhibiting abnormal aggression. The mother bear and cubs were successfully relocated to a remote mountain area, away from human populations. Maria's death prompted immediate changes to the waste management protocols, including the installation of bear-proof garbage containers and new guidelines for refuge. The community also implemented an early warning system for wildlife sightings and began requiring all residents to remove potential attractants from their properties. Then there's the story of Rebecca Martinez. It was October 15, 2016, and the Georgia sun was setting over her 10-acre property, casting long shadows across a maze of makeshift kennels and chain-link runs. The constant barking echoed across the land. It had become the soundtrack of her life. 40 rescue dogs, each one carrying the scars of abuse, neglect, or abandonment. At 34, Rebecca had spent 8 years building her unofficial sanctuary, taking in the dogs that other shelters wouldn't touch, the aggressive ones, the biters, the animals marked for immediate euthanization. Her recent divorce had left her financially strained, emotionally isolated, with only her dogs for company on that remote property. Rebecca's neighbors had grown used to the noise, though some whispered concerns about the woman who seemed to care more about dangerous animals than her own safety. She rarely left the property anymore, moving between enclos with hands scarred from countless bites, badges of honor in her mind. Friends who still visited noticed the changes in Rebecca over the months. She'd grown thinner, more withdrawn, speaking more about her dogs than anything else. Her ex-husband had tried to warn her about the dangers, but Rebecca dismissed his concerns as jealousy over her dedication. The local veterinarian had stopped making house calls after Rex had lunged at him through a fence gap, requiring stitches on his forearm, Even the feed delivery drivers had begun leaving supplies at the gate rather than approaching the main compound. The main enclave housed her three largest rescues: Rex, a 90-pound pit bull mix with a history of severe abuse; Titan, an 85-pound Rottweiler cross; and Scar, a 75-pound mixed breed whose face told the story of his fighting past. What Rebecca didn't realize was that these three had been forming an alliance over the past few weeks, establishing a hierarchy that put them at odds with anyone who came between them, especially when it came to food. The warning signs had been there for anyone trained to recognize them. The three dogs had begun sleeping closer together, sharing food bowls and displaying coordinated territorial behavior when other dogs approached. They'd started following Rebecca's movements more intently during feeding times, their body language shifting from grateful anticipation to something more predatory. But Rebecca, exhausted from managing 40 animals alone and emotionally invested in seeing progress. I'll never forget the story of Rebecca, a rescuer whose life ended in the very place she sought to create safety. She missed every signal, every subtle shift in the animals she cared for. I think about that a lot. How easily we can misread the world around us. That evening, as the light faded, Rebecca began her daily feeding routine, a task that was always the most dangerous part of her day. She filled 5 buckets with kibble. The metallic clanging sent the dogs into a frenzy. The ground was still wet from an afternoon thunderstorm as she approached the main enclave, buckets in hand. The 3 large dogs pressed against the fence, their eyes locked on the food, muscles tense. She had done this thousands of times before, but tonight, she would later say, felt different. The air seemed charged with more than just humidity. As Rebecca unlatched the gate and stepped into the enclave, her worn boots slipped on the muddy ground. She stumbled, trying to regain her balance, but the weight of the buckets pulled her down. The metal containers crashed, spilling kibble across the wet dirt. Rex was the first to move, but as Rebecca struggled to get back on her feet, something in his demeanor shifted. His eyes, which had been focused on the kibble, now locked onto her. At that moment, she wasn't the woman who had saved him. She was competition. The attack came without warning. Rex's 90 pounds of muscle slammed into Rebecca's chest, driving her back to the ground. His jaws clamped down on her shoulder, tearing through flesh with devastating force. Rebecca's scream pierced the evening air, but there was no one around for miles to hear it. Titan and Scar joined the assault within seconds, their pack instincts overriding years of rehabilitation. Titan's massive jaws found her left arm, shaking violently. Scar circled behind, his teeth sinking into her legs, dragging her further from the gate. Rebecca fought desperately, her free hand clawing at Rex's face, trying to break his grip. But the dogs were in full predatory mode now, their attacks coordinated and relentless. Blood soaked into the muddy ground as they continued their assault, their growls mixing with Rebecca's weakening cries. The feeding frenzy lasted nearly 10 minutes before the dogs finally backed away. Rebecca lay motionless in the mud, her body broken and torn, surrounded by the scattered kibble that had triggered the attack. For 3 days, Rebecca's body remained undiscovered on the isolated property. It wasn't until a delivery driver arrived with dog food that the scene was uncovered. Animal control officers found the 3 attacking dogs still in the enclosure, showing no signs of continued aggression. Rex, Titan, and Scar were euthanized within hours, along with 12 other dogs deemed too dangerous for relocation. Rebecca's death sparked debates about unlicensed rescue operations. New regulations were implemented, requiring permits for anyone housing more than 10 rescue animals. But for those who knew Rebecca, the rules came too late. Then there's the story of Camille Morel. It was April 3, 2017, in Thor, France. Inside the Thor Zoo Safari Park, the wolf sector adjacent to the bison paddock, meant to mimic the wild stillness of Yellowstone, seemed calm. Yet within the shadows of its pines, something alive and waiting stirred. A quiet rhythm of movement that would soon break that silence for good. Camille Morel was 29. A fitness instructor from Versailles who lived by routine. Known among her clients for her precision and self-discipline, she maintained the same training schedule no matter where she was. After 6 months of non-stop classes at her studio, she decided to spend a weekend at the Thor Zoo Safari, one of the few places near Paris offering guests an overnight wilderness immersion without leaving the country. It wasn't her first visit. She'd stayed once before and remembered the tranquility of waking to animal sounds instead of traffic. She booked the chalet not just for rest, but to keep her running habit intact in the open air. To friends, Camille's decision made sense. The park's trails and guest roads were well marked and safe during visiting hours. She'd read the safety pamphlet about restricted areas and believed her familiarity with the grounds made her cautious enough. Her chalet overlooked the fenced wolf sector adjacent to the bison range, a layout designed to reduce mixed-species stress and liability during guest drives. The animals were separated by natural barriers and double fence zones, and guests were told the viewing area was completely secure. Camille trusted the system. Her goal that morning was simple: a quick 2-mile jog before breakfast, the same as she did every morning at home. The zoo's landscape was a strange fusion of natural calm and controlled wilderness, pine trees in neat clusters, sandy trails, and an artificial stream running through the lands. At dawn, the service road and the inner track appeared nearly identical, a known issue in drive-through parks where early light flattens contrast. Beyond the chalet's edge stretched a gravel service road used by rangers and tour jeeps. The wolves' territory extended across nearly 20 acres of wooded ground. Gray wolves, the largest of the canids, can weigh over 100 pounds and run up to 35 miles per hour for short bursts. Pack behavior revolves around cooperation and hierarchy. Most attacks on humans occur only when the animals feel threatened, cornered, or see unusual movement that triggers pursuit. In captivity, stress or broken boundaries can alter those instincts. That morning, a scheduled maintenance check had delayed some of the park's early operations. Workers had opened an internal service gate near the chalet to move a small utility vehicle through. Overnight, frost had iced the latch mechanism, preventing full engagement of the double lock. And when one of the workers received a call about a mechanical issue elsewhere, he left under maintenance override without confirming it was secure. The gate's interlock was meant to be re-engaged once staff passed, a step that failed. Around 7 a.m., Camille stepped outside with her phone and a small water bottle. She jogged down the gravel path that bordered the guest area, seeing no posted "I'll never forget" reading about Camille's last moments. The wolves emerged from the trees, low to the ground, tails stiff, heads aligned. She slowed, confused, thinking the barrier must be nearby, but it wasn't. She had unknowingly crossed into the wolf enclave. The wolves, restless after a cold night and already fed the previous evening, were near the northern edge, their senses heightened by the scent of human movement. A zookeeper, scanning from the observation tower, radioed for confirmation, then realized the horrifying truth. She was inside. He shouted, but before a patrol could respond, the wolves moved. At first there was no immediate charge, just a deliberate advance. When their posture shifted, Camille froze. She turned, saw the empty gravel behind her, and started to run. The wolves matched her pace, then accelerated. She glanced back once, a fatal mistake, as her foot caught on the uneven gravel near a drainage trench, and she fell. Before she could rise, the lead wolf clamped down on her thigh, pulling her backward. Another lunged at her shoulder. Her scream, high and ragged, echoed across the enclave. The zookeeper sounded the alarm, but the response vehicle was delayed, rerouted around the inner fence lines. 2 more wolves joined, surrounding her as she tried to crawl toward the ditch. The lead wolf released, then gripped higher, its teeth sinking into her hip. She struck out, scraping the gravel, but one of the animals bit into her arm, shaking until it tore free. Within moments she was on her back, thrashing as the pack pulled from opposite sides. She kicked weakly once more, then went still. Rangers arrived within 10 minutes, finding the wolves clustered over Camille's body. Warning shots scattered the pack. They covered her with a thermal blanket. An autopsy confirmed death by exsanguination, massive blood loss due to multiple deep lacerations and crushing trauma to the limbs. The aftermath was a civil lawsuit, settled quietly by the Thori Zoo Safari and a criminal negligence inquiry. Procedural retrofits were implemented. Interlocks and alarms triggered if any gate remained unlatched for more than 15 seconds. Then, on July 22, 2016, the scorching Oklahoma sun beat down on the dusty grounds of Wildwood Big Hat Sanctuary. This privately owned facility, nestled among rolling hills 30 miles outside Tulsa, housed over 20 rescued lions, tigers, and other exotic cats in a collection of chain-link enclave. The afternoon air shimmered with heat, and the sounds of roaring and pacing echoed as the cats sought shade from the oppressive summer temperatures. Ashley Martinez, a 23-year-old college student from Dallas, had discovered the sanctuary through social media while road tripping with her boyfriend, Jake, through Oklahoma's quirky roadside attractions. Ashley, constantly seeking unique photo opportunities, had grown up taking pictures at every family vacation and a special event. Her phone was filled with daredevil shots from cliff edges, abandoned buildings, and extreme sports activities. Growing up in suburban Dallas as the youngest of 3 sisters, she had developed a competitive streak, pushing boundaries and seeking attention through increasingly dramatic stunts. Her psychology major at Texas Tech University had given her confidence in reading people and situations, but her academic knowledge didn't extend to understanding animal behavior. That afternoon, Ashley and Jake paid the sanctuary's fee for a close encounter experience that promised visitors the chance to observe big cats during feeding demonstrations and educational presentations. The facility operated in a legal gray area, offering interactions that legitimate zoos and accredited sanctuaries would never permit. African lions are apex predators that retain all their wild instincts regardless of human contact or hand-rearing. Adult males can weigh up to 420 pounds and possess incredible strength, speed, and territorial behaviors that make them extremely dangerous in captivity. Lions are social animals with complex hierarchies, but they view humans as either threats to be eliminated or prey to be consumed. Their powerful jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 650 pounds per square inch, while their razor-sharp claws can inflict fatal wounds with a single swipe. I sometimes think about the moment when instinct takes over, when millions of years of evolution can be triggered in an instant. It makes you wonder how thin the line is between us and the wild. Ashley's story is a chilling example. She was visiting an animal sanctuary, excited to get a photo with Caesar, a 400-pound African lion. He'd been hand-raised and seemed calm enough. But as she climbed over the barrier, hoping for a selfie, she unknowingly stepped into his territory. Ashley, eager for a unique photograph, asked her friend Jake to distract the sanctuary owner while she went for a closer shot with Caesar. She quietly approached the enclosure, climbing over the 4-foot chain-link fence. The massive lion, resting about 10 feet away, watched her every move. At first, Caesar seemed indifferent, but as Ashley moved closer, his demeanor changed. His ears flattened, and his tail began to twitch. Then, with explosive suddenness, his predatory instincts took over. The moment she adjusted her pose, something clicked within him, and he saw her as prey. He launched himself at her with incredible speed. Her phone flew from her hand as his paws struck her chest, sending her crashing backward. His claws tore into her torso and shoulders, and his jaws clamped down on her neck, his teeth piercing through muscle and bone. The attack was relentless, driven by his territorial instincts. Jake's screams alerted the sanctuary owner, but it was too late. Caesar's aggressive posture made it too dangerous to intervene. Ashley's movements soon ceased, the brutal assault proving fatal. Emergency responders arrived within 30 minutes, but there was nothing they could do. The aftermath revealed the facility was operating without proper permits and insurance, violating safety regulations. Caesar was relocated to an accredited sanctuary. Ashley's death devastated her family and led to stricter regulations for exotic animal facilities. Then there's the story of Giovanni Russo. It was May 21, 2018, in Gran Paradiso National Park, northern Italy. He was a certified alpine guide, leading trekking tours with his wife, Elena. They specialized in remote routes, respecting the balance between humans and wildlife. But one night, a seemingly routine trek took a tragic turn. I've seen the aftermath of a wolf attack. The chilling stillness that descends. The weight of what's been lost. In Italy's Parco Nazionale d'Abruzzo, a man named Giovanni became a tragic example. He died because of a freak accident involving wolves, a fatal tear to an artery as he struggled. It was a stark reminder of the wild's unpredictable nature. Now I find myself thinking about another park, thousands of miles away. July 15th, 2016. The Lawson family arrived at Sundarbans National Park in West Bengal, India. Imagine that vast mangrove delta, a maze of tidal channels, ancient trees rising from brackish water. A UNESCO World Heritage Site, yes, but also one of the world's most dangerous ecosystems. Saltwater crocodiles lurking, venomous snakes coiled above. And then, of course, there are the tigers. Genevieve Lawson, a 42-year-old real estate agent, booked the most expensive tour. She was demanding, unwilling to accept limitations. Apparently, she berated their guide, Ravi, repeatedly, dismissing safety warnings as fear-mongering. Her husband tried to intervene, but Genevieve was insistent on getting what she wanted, regardless of the risks. Ravi, with his 15 years of experience, was intimidated by her threats and demands. The boat had safety barriers, but Genevieve saw them as obstacles to the authentic photographs she wanted. The Sundarbans are home to the world's largest population of Bengal tigers, apex predators uniquely adapted to this aquatic environment. They're exceptional swimmers willing to hunt humans in water. These tigers can weigh up to 400 pounds, Maya over 10 feet long, with 4-inch canine teeth capable of crushing windpipes. During their afternoon tour, Ravi spotted fresh tiger tracks. He cut the engine, whispering for silence, explaining that a large male tiger had recently passed through. But Genevieve, frustrated by the distance, declared she needed closer photographs. Against everyone's protest, she stepped over the safety barrier and into the chest-deep water, camera held high. Unbeknownst to them, a 400-pound male Bengal tiger had been resting nearby, already aware of the boat's engine. These tigers are ambush predators, using the water to their advantage. This particular tiger had killed humans before, recognizing the sounds of vulnerable prey entering his territory. It slipped into the water, swimming toward Genevieve, only its eyes and nose visible. As Genevieve photographed the tiger tracks, she was completely unaware of the approaching danger. The tiger closed the final 20 feet underwater, then erupted from the water behind Genevieve. Its jaws clamped around her throat. The 4-inch canine teeth punctured her neck, crushing her windpipe with immense force. The tiger's killing technique: suffocation. Genevieve's body went rigid as major blood vessels were severed. The tiger pulled her backward into deeper water, maintaining its crushing grip. I've seen things in the archives that stay with you, filed away, but never truly gone. A crushed windpipe, severed arteries, forced submersion. Death within 2 minutes. That's what the report said. The tiger held her underwater for several more minutes, then disappeared into the mangrove maze. It was November 15, 2016, in the remote forests of Primorsky Krai, eastern Russia. Snow fell, muting the sounds. Nikolai Baranov's radio had been silent since morning. He was 52, a forestry worker who managed patrols near the Cody Allen Mountains, monitoring traps, logging, and poaching. He lived alone near Dalner, his life following the forest's rhythm. That week, he was surveying a hunting reserve after reports of wolves near villages. He rode out before dawn on his snowmobile with bread, tea, an axe, and flares. Colleagues said he preferred working solo. A second engine scared off wildlife. The assignment was simple: document animal tracks after the first full snow. Wolves were active, driven from higher ground after wild boar numbers collapsed. They could travel up to 20 miles in a night, driven by hunger across frozen ground. Their diets shifted with the season: deer in autumn, carrion, smaller mammals. In the hard winter months, when prey vanished beneath ice and snow, instinct blurred into desperation. A human scent, faint and unfamiliar, might trigger an ancient reflex to follow and test. Locals warned of animals following sled trails at dusk. Nikolai heard the warnings that morning but didn't take them seriously. He checked his flare gun but left his rifle behind. By noon, the weather shifted, with gusting snow and dropping visibility. His supervisor tried to radio him, assuming battery failure from the cold. When evening came and Nikolai hadn't returned, Yevgen, a neighboring ranger and longtime friend, prepared to follow his route before dark. Yevgen rode out around 5 p.m. with a flashlight and a sidearm. The tracks were faint but visible, a single snowmobile line winding north, then stopping abruptly about 800 meters from the ridge. The engine was half buried in snow, its headlight faintly glowing. The prints showed that Nikolai had dismounted, perhaps to clear ice. Around the site, another pattern emerged: paw marks, deep and overlapping, circling. Drag lines showed pacing. Then the circle tightened. From that point, the scene unfolded in a sequence of struggle. Human footprints turned erratic, moving backward. A snapped branch at chest height, a torn glove 10 feet away. A smear of blood marked the snowmobile's side panel. 30 feet beyond, the snow showed clear impressions of multiple bodies pressing down. Wolves and man. The wolves had likely approached silently, using the snowfall and wind as cover. Initial bites were to the legs, pulling him down. Blood spray against nearby birch bark indicated arterial injury within seconds. As the attack progressed, the evidence suggested coordinated movement. Bite patterns indicated coordinated restraint from multiple angles. His jacket was shredded along the spine, showing where one animal had clamped onto his back while another tore at the neck. Boot prints ended mid-stride, replaced by drag marks. Yevgen followed them cautiously, revolver drawn. The forest was unnervingly still. He found the body 30 meters downhill near a frozen stream. The snow around it was flattened and red. The wolves had likely fed briefly before retreating. Later investigations showed at least 4 individuals, 2 larger adults, 2 smaller juveniles. Yevgen radioed the base immediately. It took nearly an hour for a snow vehicle to arrive, by which time darkness had swallowed the clearing. The men lifted the body onto a tarp, careful not to disturb the bite patterns. The stench of blood lingered even in the cold. The pack didn't return, but distant howls echoed as the rescuers secured the area. Nikolai's remains were taken to Dahlner for examination. The autopsy confirmed catastrophic blood loss with multiple punctures to major vessels and crushing trauma to the neck vertebrae consistent with a fatal bite. Time of death was estimated shortly after the onset of the attack. The official report listed predatory behavior exacerbated by winter scarcity. Specialists noted that 2016 saw an unusual decline in prey density across the region. The incident received a single mention on regional news, framed as a tragic encounter during severe weather. There was no footage, only photographs from the recovery team that were never released publicly. Then, there's a different file. June 14th, 2015. The Sunset Lake subdivision in suburban Tampa, Florida, settling into another warm summer evening. The gated community, built around retention ponds and decorative canals, marketed as a tropical paradise for retirees. Walter Walt Kowalski, a 67-year-old retired plumber from Ohio, was enjoying his 5th year in Florida from his backyard patio, overlooking one of the community's scenic waterways. Walt had moved. There's something ancient about alligators, something that speaks to the deep history of this planet. They've remained virtually unchanged for over 200 million years. I find that fact staggering. Perfectly adapted as ambush hunters in the aquatic world, adult males can reach 14 feet, weigh over 1,000 pounds, and exert 3,000 pounds of press per square inch with their jaws. I remember reading a story once, a tragic one, about a man named Walt. He'd moved to Florida after selling his plumbing business, drawn by the promise of year-round golf and outdoor living. He bought a modest ranch home with water access, a private dock where he'd fish and feed the ducks. His evening routine involved sitting on his patio with a beer, watching the sunset reflect on the water as he tossed breadcrumbs to the waterfowl. The Sunset Lakes community, where Walt lived, had been built on reclaimed wetlands. Developers created retention ponds and canals to manage storm runoff and provide attractive water features. These waterways connected to natural creek systems that flowed into Tampa Bay, allowing wildlife to move freely. Recent heavy rains had raised water levels, bringing more wildlife activity to residential areas. Walt had noticed more alligators, but like most Floridians, he'd learned to coexist. His regular duck feeding, though, created a reliable food source, attracting waterfowl from all over. One evening, Walt was relaxing when he noticed his favorite fishing lure tangled in the vegetation near his dock. He waded into the knee-deep water, using a net to free the lure. He'd done this many times before without incident, confident that the shallow water was safe. The attack came from directly beneath him. A 12-foot alligator, submerged motionless near the dock for over an hour, waiting for ducks, exploded upward. The reptile's jaws clamped onto Walt's right leg with bone-crushing power, instantly fracturing his femur and severing arteries. The alligator initiated its signature death roll, spinning rapidly while maintaining its grip. The violent rotation dislocated Walt's hip and pulled him fully into the canal. The alligator dragged Walt toward the deeper center, where its superior swimming ability made escape impossible. Within minutes, Walt's movements ceased. Emergency responders arrived within 10 minutes of his wife's call, but the alligator had already retreated with Walt's body. The investigation revealed that Walt's duck feeding had inadvertently attracted the alligator, creating the dangerous situation. Afterward, the community installed warning signs around the ponds and canals. It reminds me of another story, this one from September 8, 2014, in the vast wetlands of the Florida Everglades. I've always been fascinated by the raw power of apex predators, how perfectly their bodies are adapted to their environments. It's a primal thing, that balance between life and death. I remember reading about alligators, how adult males can reach lengths of 14 feet and weights exceeding 1,000 pounds. Their jaw muscles can exert over 3,000 pounds of press per square inch. On an airboat tour, a guide spotted a massive alligator sunning itself on a mud bank, only about 20 feet away. It was an exceptional specimen, easily 12 feet long and weighing over 800 pounds. One of the passengers, a man named Michael, started taking pictures. He was excited to capture images of such an impressive wild animal, wanting to show them to his colleagues back home. But his enthusiasm overtook his caution. He leaned farther over the boat's edge to get closer shots, and his phone slipped from his grip, falling toward the dark water. Without thinking, Michael lunged forward, desperately trying to catch his expensive device before it disappeared into the swamp. That was the fatal moment. The alligator, which had been patiently monitoring the boat, saw Michael's sudden movement and attacked. The 800-pound reptile exploded from the mudbank with terrifying speed, its powerful tail propelling it through the water like a missile aimed directly at Michael's exposed position. The alligator's massive jaws clamped down on Michael's outstretched arm with bone-crushing force. 3,000 pounds of bite press instantly shattered bones and severed major arteries. Michael's scream of shock and pain echoed across the swamp as the reptile's momentum pulled him completely over the side of the airboat and into the murky water. The tour guide and other passengers grabbed desperately at Michael's legs, trying to pull him back into the boat, but the massive alligator maintained its crushing grip on his arm. It immediately began its signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining its devastating grip. Michael's struggles grew weaker as the combination of massive blood loss, crushing injuries, and drowning overwhelmed his body. The alligator's grip never loosened as it continued the death roll with mechanical precision, each rotation causing additional trauma while ensuring its prey could not escape. Within minutes, Michael's movement ceased as the alligator's brutal assault proved fatal. The massive reptile dragged his body into deeper water, where it disappeared beneath the surface with its kill. Emergency responders arrived within the hour, but Michael's body wasn't recovered until the following day, when wildlife officials located the massive alligator and retrieved the remains. The tour company immediately implemented physical barriers around all passenger seating areas and enhanced safety briefings for future tours. Michael's death prompted his family to advocate for stricter safety regulations in the wildlife tourism industry. The incident highlighted the deadly consequences of ignoring safety warnings around apex predators and became a cautionary tale about the dangers of prioritizing photography over personal safety. Another story, equally tragic, unfolded on July 8, 2017. The Detroit summer heat shimmered off abandoned lots as Maria Santos loaded her car with dog food and water. At 28, she'd spent 5 years walking dogs by day and feeding Detroit's feral population by night. Recently laid off, she'd been spending more time in dangerous neighborhoods, trying to help animals most people considered beyond saving. The economic collapse had hit Detroit hard, leaving entire neighborhoods abandoned and creating perfect breeding grounds for packs of wild dogs. These weren't lost pets. They were second and third generation feral animals that had never known human kindness, surviving by scavenging and defending territory with savage efficiency. Maria's regular route took her through 6 abandoned lots, each home to a different pack. She knew their hierarchies, feeding schedules, and individual personalities. But the newest group concerned her the most. 6 dogs led by a large German Shepherd mix she'd nicknamed Alpha, including several animals she didn't recognize. This pack was hungrier, more aggressive, and less predictable than the others. But Maria's compassion overruled her caution. These animals needed help, and she was the only one willing to provide it. As twilight settled over the abandoned neighborhood, Maria parked near the lot where Alpha's pack had made their home. The area was a wasteland of broken concrete and waist-high weeds, perfect cover for animals that had learned to hunt and hide. Maria had been feeding this pack for 3 weeks, always maintaining a safe distance, but tonight felt different. The dogs seemed more agitated, their movements more coordinated, their attention more focused on her than on the food. What she didn't realize was that pack dynamics had shifted with the addition of 3 new dogs, animals that saw humans not as providers but as competitors. Alpha emerged from the shadows first, his 80-pound frame moving with predatory grace. Behind him came the others, a scarred pit bull mix, 2 smaller dogs, and 3 newcomers whose breeds were impossible to determine. Their eyes reflected the dim streetlight like mirrors. Maria began distributing food as always, tossing handfuls of kibble in different directions to prevent fighting. But tonight, the strategy backfired. Instead of dispersing to eat, the dogs began to... I've seen what happens when pack instincts take over, when the wild reclaims what was once tame. It's a primal switch that flips without warning. I remember reading about Maria, a woman who fed a pack of stray dogs in an abandoned neighborhood. She thought she was helping them, but she didn't realize she was blurring the lines between caregiver and competitor. The moment she stepped between 2 dogs fighting over food, everything changed. To the Alpha, an 80-pound animal named Alpha, she wasn't the provider anymore, but a rival. His attack was swift and brutal. He launched himself at her, jaws clamping down, the other dogs joining in, their pack mentality overwhelming any memory of her kindness. There was nothing left but instinct. Her screams went unanswered in that desolate place. 6 dogs, driven by generations of predatory instincts, dragged her deeper into the lot. These weren't pets. They were feral animals who saw humans as either threats or prey. The attack only ended when Maria was motionless. Urban explorers found her body the next morning. It took 3 days to capture the dogs. They were euthanized because their wild nature made rehabilitation impossible. I think of that stark contrast now, as I consider the story of Kendra Sullivan, a wildlife photographer who arrived at the Namba Island Chimpanzee Sanctuary in Uganda on September 8, 2015. The sanctuary, a 100-acre forested island on Lake Victoria, was a refuge for rescued chimpanzees. Kendra, commissioned by a wildlife magazine, was known for her fearless approach. She believed her experience with domestic animals gave her an understanding of animal behavior that transcended species. But Dr. James Mukasa, the sanctuary's director, and Peter Sally, a caretaker, grew concerned as Kendra dismissed safety briefings and sought access to restricted areas. They repeatedly warned her about the unpredictable nature of these powerful animals. The sanctuary housed 49 chimpanzees, many traumatized by poaching or the pet trade, and despite rehabilitation, they retained their wild instincts. Chimpanzees are incredibly strong, with a grip strength that can crush bones. They also possess large canine teeth, designed for defense and dominance. During the tour, Kendra grew frustrated with the viewing restrictions. She wanted access to the maintenance areas, but Dr. Mukasa explained they were off limits due to the danger of direct contact. While the group observed chimpanzees in a distant enclave, Kendra noticed an unlocked gate leading to a maintenance corridor. Ignoring the warnings, she slipped away, confident her experience had prepared her for anything. The maintenance area brought Kendra within reach of Bozo, the sanctuary's dominant male, a 150-pound chimpanzee rescued as an infant 15 years earlier. Bozo, known for his aggression toward unfamiliar humans, was resting near the barrier when he sensed Kendra's presence. Chimpanzees are territorial, viewing unfamiliar humans as threats. When Kendra approached and raised her camera, Bozo interpreted it as a challenge. His response was immediate. He lunged forward, grabbing Kendra's arm with crushing force. I've read accounts of chimpanzee attacks, and one detail always stays with me. They instinctively target the face, hands, and genitals. It's a brutal efficiency, a primal understanding of how to inflict maximum damage. I remember one case in particular. Kendra was pulled against the barrier with such force that the bones in her forearm immediately fractured. The chimpanzee, named Bozo, had canine teeth over 2 inches long, razor sharp. They tore into her face and neck. His hands ripped at her clothing, his feet kicked violently at her torso. The attack lasted nearly 2 minutes. Bozo maintained his grip, simultaneously biting and clawing. His powerful jaws crushed facial bones, tore away large sections of skin and muscle. The chimpanzee's sharp teeth severed major blood vessels in her neck, causing massive bleeding. Her attempts to defend herself were futile against his overwhelming strength. Her free hand was severely mutilated by Bozo's bites, several fingers crushed by his powerful jaws. Someone heard Kendra's screams and rushed to the maintenance area with high-press water hoses, managing to drive Bozo away after nearly 2 minutes. By then, Kendra had suffered catastrophic injuries. The massive blood loss and shock proved fatal within minutes. Kendra died before emergency medical services could reach the remote island location. The investigation focused on security failures. It was February 9, 2014, near Lang, Saskatchewan. The morning light filtered slowly through the northern boreal forest. For 2 men setting out that day, it seemed like just another trip into familiar woods. David Lasky was 45, a part-time wildlife photographer. His cousin Jeff, 42, often joined him on winter runs to retrieve SD cards from trail cams. They'd grown up hunting and fishing together. That weekend, after a light snowfall, late-season hunger had made local deer scarce, and David wanted to check a set of cameras he'd left by a frozen creek north of Waskew Lake. They'd heard distant howls before, never close. David believed wolves avoided humans by instinct. The plan was simple. A 2-hour ride by snowmobile, a short hike to the cameras, and back before dusk. Wolves in the region were typically gray, thick-coated animals averaging about 90 pounds. They moved in tight family groups of 4 to 8. Their strength lay in coordination, silent pursuit, strategic circling, and patience, rather than outright speed. The men dressed in insulated gear and carried only a single red flare for safety. By 9:30 a.m., they parked their snowmobile near the creek and began walking the last half-mile through packed snow. At first, everything was normal. They reached the first camera, brushed off the lens, and swapped the SD card. Around 10:15, as they crossed the creek, Jeff's boot slipped on a patch of ice. David crouched to help him up, steadying his cousin by the arm. That was when both noticed faint movement among the tree line across the creek. The animals stood still at first, only their eyes catching light. Jeff straightened and waved his arms, shouting to scare them off. The wolves didn't run. Unbeknownst to the men, a freshly killed deer lay half-buried in snow about 20 yards behind the tree line. A cached carcass the wolves had dragged there the night before. The pack was food-stressed, defending the cache rather than hunting. They began to fan out slowly, forming a loose semicircle. David muttered that they were just curious, that noise would drive them away. But even as he spoke, one of the wolves lowered its head and started advancing. The men began backing up the slope toward their snowmobile, moving quickly but without turning. The wolves followed, quiet and steady. Then the first lunge came. A gray blur across the ice, jaws clamping onto the back of David's leg. The impact drove him face first into the snow. Jeff spun and reached for the flare, but his gloves fumbled with the cap. Two more wolves broke from the trees, bounding fast, their paws sending up bursts of white powder. David tried to kick free, leaving streaks of blood against the snow. He managed to roll onto his back and swing an arm, hitting one wolf across the muzzle with his camera bag, but another struck from the side, teeth finding his shoulder. Jeff finally snapped the flare to life, the red flame hissing. He swung it toward the animals. One wolf snarled and darted back, fur singed along its flank, but the others held ground. David was on his knees now, one hand pressed to his thigh, blood pumping dark and fast through his fingers. He tried to rise, but his leg gave out beneath him. Jeff charged forward with the flare, yelling, waving it more aggressively. The heat drove them back momentarily, circling just out of reach. David slumped sideways. I still think about that case in Saskatchewan sometimes. December 8, 2018. A man named Jeff, his cousin David, and a pack of wolves. The official report called it exsanguination from femoral artery trauma. David didn't stand a chance. Jeff had been out with his cousin, who was carrying a camera bag. Something attacked, and Jeff swung a burning flare to keep the wolves back. But it was no use. He tried to stop the bleeding, but it was too late. He managed to call for help, a faint signal reaching a ranger station. When authorities arrived about 40 minutes later, they found Jeff shaking beside the body. Wolf tracks surrounded the site, leading back toward the tree line. The wolves, biologists suggested, had been defending a food cache, not actively hunting, but the distinction mattered little to those who saw what was left. Then, almost unbelievably, Another attack. Just one day later. It was December 9th, 2018, and the hillside community of Canyon Vista in suburban Los Angeles was experiencing an unusually warm winter evening. 16-year-old Kevin Chen, a high school junior and varsity basketball player, was running late after practice. He decided to take his usual shortcut through an undeveloped lot rather than follow the longer route along the main road. He was an honor student and star athlete, living with his parents and younger sister in a modern home that backed up against the natural open space. Kevin often used the informal trails and vacant lots to move quickly between his home and school, something he'd done for 4 years without incident. But the Canyon Vista area had been experiencing increased wildlife activity following a series of devastating wildfires. The fires had displaced numerous predators, forcing them to seek new territory and food sources in areas they had previously avoided. Local authorities had issued warnings about mountain lion sightings in residential areas, but most residents viewed these as routine precautions rather than serious threats. Kevin was aware of the warnings but had never encountered any dangerous animals. He carried his basketball gear in a backpack and typically moved quickly, confident that his familiarity with the terrain and his athletic ability would keep him safe. Mountain lions are solitary predators that require large territories. Juvenile males are particularly dangerous as they establish new territories, often displaying more aggressive behavior than experienced adults. These young cats are less skilled at hunting natural prey and may target easier victims, including domestic animals and, occasionally, humans. They are capable of incredible stealth and can stalk prey for extended periods before launching surprise attacks from close range. As Kevin jogged through the overgrown vacant lot, he was unaware that an 80 lb juvenile male mountain lion had been using the area as a hunting ground for domestic cats and small dogs. The young cat had been displaced from his natal territory by an older, more dominant male, and was desperately seeking to establish new hunting grounds. The mountain lion had been stalking Kevin for several hundred yards, moving silently through the dense brush while staying downwind to avoid detection. The cat's hunting instincts were triggered by Kevin's size, movement pattern, and the fact that he was alone and vulnerable in the predator's newly claimed territory. The attack came from behind as Kevin navigated through a particularly dense section of chaparral. The 80 lb mountain lion launched himself from the brush with explosive force, landing squarely on Kevin's back. The impact drove Kevin face first into the rocky ground, while the cat's claws found purchase in his shoulders and back. The mountain lion's jaws clamped down on the back of Kevin's neck, his 4-inch canine teeth puncturing through muscle and vertebrae, his bite force targeting the spinal cord. Kevin's attempts to fight back with his backpack proved futile. The mountain lion's razor-sharp claws raked across Kevin's shoulders and torso, opening deep gashes that caused massive blood loss. Kevin's screams for help echoed through the hillside community, alerting residents in nearby homes. Several homeowners called 911 while attempting to locate the source of the disturbance, but the dense vegetation made it difficult to pinpoint Kevin's exact location. The mountain lion continued his attack for several minutes, driven by predatory instincts and the stress of establishing new territory. Police and paramedics arrived within 10 minutes of the first 911 call, using Kevin's cries for help to locate him in the brush. I've always been drawn to the stories where the line between the human world and the wild blurs, often with tragic consequences. Take the story of Kevin, for instance. He died after being attacked by a mountain lion displaced by wildfires. It's a stark reminder that when urban development encroaches on natural habitats, the results can be devastating. The mountain lion, startled by the arrival of emergency responders, fled into the surrounding hills. Kevin was airlifted to a trauma center, but the blood loss and spinal injuries were too severe. He died during surgery. The investigation revealed the young mountain lion had been driven from its territory by recent wildfires and was trying to find a new home in the residential area. Wildlife officers tracked the cat and euthanized it the following day, concluding that its aggression made relocation impossible. Kevin's death spurred the city to take action. They fenced off vacant lots in hillside communities and developed new protocols for wildlife management in areas where urban and natural worlds meet. The Canyon Vista community installed motion sensor lighting along trails, emergency communication systems, and mandatory wildlife awareness training for residents. His family even established a foundation to support wildlife safety education and habitat preservation programs. Then there's the story of Brandon Walsh. November 3, 2015, at the Lone Star Exotic Ranch. The sprawling grounds covered 300 acres of East Texas countryside. It was a place where wealthy clients paid for photo sessions with dangerous predators. These private facilities often operate in the shadows, offering interactions that accredited zoos would never allow. That afternoon, the sun cast long shadows across enclosures housing tigers, lions, and other big cats acquired through, shall we say, questionable means. Brandon, a 27-year-old personal trainer from Houston, had heard about the ranch through word of mouth. He was passionate about fitness and adventure, always seeking new challenges. He had saved for months to afford this experience, viewing it as the ultimate test of courage. Brandon had built his business through dedication, helping clients overcome fears and achieve fitness goals. Perhaps his success made him overconfident. He paid the ranch's fee for a private photo session with Sasha, a 300-pound female Bengal tiger raised from a cub. The ranch owner, a former circus trainer, supervised, emphasizing the dangers involved. Bengal tigers are powerful predators. Adult females can weigh up to 350 pounds with incredible strength, speed, and hunting instincts. They're solitary, territorial animals that can become aggressive when their space is violated. Their jaws can deliver bite forces exceeding 1,000 pounds per square inch, and their claws can grow up to 4 inches long. The session began with Brandon outside Sasha's enclosure, posing near the tiger while maintaining a safe distance. But he quickly grew frustrated, wanting closer contact for more dramatic photos. He convinced the owner to allow him closer access, arguing that his fitness and confident energy would keep the tiger calm. Against his better judgment, the owner agreed to let Brandon enter a smaller holding area next to Sasha's enclosure. The holding area was separated from Sasha's territory by only a chain-link barrier, bringing Brandon within arm's reach. He began posing for his camera, mounted on a tripod and set to take photos automatically. Brandon's fatal mistake was crouching down next to the barrier and extending his hand towards Sasha, believing his confidence would demonstrate dominance over the apex predator. The tiger's ears flattened, her tail twitching. Then, the attack. It was swift and devastating. The moment Brandon moved to adjust his pose, the tiger's hunting instincts activated. Sasha launched herself at the barrier with tremendous power. Her paws struck the chain-link fencing, her claws finding purchase on Brandon's arm. The tiger's strength pulled Brandon against the barrier, her jaws snapping through the fencing. The tiger's claws raked across Brandon's arm and shoulder, opening deep gashes that bled profusely. Her grip prevented any escape. The ranch owner rushed to intervene, distracting Sasha and forcing her to release Brandon. But the damage was catastrophic. The tiger's claws had severed major arteries, causing massive blood loss. Brandon collapsed from shock within minutes. His physical conditioning was useless against such injuries. I find myself haunted by the story of Brandon, the fitness model. He died so needlessly, crushed by an elephant during a photo shoot. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but it was too late. Massive trauma and blood loss. Gone in 20 minutes. The ranch, it turned out, was operating illegally. No permits, no insurance, just a reckless disregard for safety around dangerous animals. Sasha, the elephant, was moved to a proper sanctuary and the facility was shut down. But Brandon was already gone. His family sued, arguing that the lack of safety measures led directly to his death. It's a stark reminder of the respect, the fear even, that we should have for the power of wild creatures. Then there's the story of Tommy Rodriguez. It was August 19, 2013, the Missouri heat pressing down on his remote property. The stench of neglect was everywhere. Tommy, a 45-year-old man, had been running puppy mills for over a decade. Financial troubles had forced him to cut corners, and those corners would ultimately lead to his demise. His 20-acre property was a maze of makeshift kennels, converted sheds housing nearly 80 dogs in various states of breeding and neglect. He specialized in popular breeds, selling them for high prices to unsuspecting buyers. But the real money came from the security side of his operation: 4 massive dogs that patrolled the perimeter. 2 cane corsos, each weighing over 120 pounds, and 2 mastiff mixes tipping the scales at nearly 140. These weren't pets. They were weapons, acquired from a defunct fighting operation and trained to be aggressive. The financial press that led to Tommy's death had been building for months. Veterinary bills, feed costs, facility maintenance, they all ate into his profits. Increased scrutiny from animal welfare organizations forced him to be more careful, but he was cutting back on everything: food, medical care, even basic maintenance. The guard dogs, once fed premium meat, were reduced to scraps and cheap kibble. He didn't understand that hungry guard dogs were exponentially more dangerous than well-fed ones. Hunger sharpened their predatory instincts, made them more territorial, and reduced their tolerance for human presence. These animals, once content to patrol, were now viewing everything on the property, including Tommy himself, as potential competition for scarce resources. They'd been showing signs of increased aggression for weeks, fighting among themselves over food, marking territory more aggressively, and showing less deference to Tommy's commands. A smart operator would have recognized these warning signs, but Tommy was desperate, distracted, and dangerously overconfident. On that sweltering August night, Tommy made his final rounds of the property, checking on breeding females and security systems. It was past midnight, and the Missouri countryside was silent except for distant barking and the hum of inadequate ventilation fans. He carried a flashlight and a metal rod for moving aggressive animals, but his attention was focused on financial calculations rather than the danger lurking in the shadows. The guard dogs had been without food for 3 days, not by design, but because Tommy had been too busy dealing with a sick litter to maintain their feeding schedule. Their hunger had reached a critical point where survival instincts overrode years of conditioning. They were no longer guard dogs protecting property. They were predators looking for their next meal. Tommy's mistake was approaching the area where he kept the guard dogs without proper precautions. Normally, he would have fed them first, ensuring their compliance before entering their territory. But financial stress and exhaustion had made him careless, and he walked directly into their domain, carrying nothing but a flashlight and false confidence. The attack began when Brutus, the larger cane corso, emerged from the shadows near the feeding area. His 125-pound frame moved with surprising silence, his massive head lowered in a hunting posture that Tommy should have recognized as a threat. Behind him came the others: Titan, the second cane corso, Rex, a 140-pound mastiff mix, and Scar, whose scarred muzzle told the story of his fighting background. Tommy realized the danger too late. As he turned to retreat, Brutus launched himself forward, his powerful jaws clamping down on Tommy's left eye with crushing force. The impact drove Tommy to the ground, his flashlight spinning away into darkness as he screamed for help that would never come. The other 3 dogs joined the attack within seconds, their pack instincts fully engaged. Rex grabbed Tommy's right arm, his massive jaws crushing bone as he shook violently. Titan went for the torso, his teeth tearing through clothing and flesh with mechanical efficiency. Scar circled the attack, darting in to bite and retreat, his fighting experience evident in his tactical approach. Tommy's screams echoed across the empty countryside, but his nearest neighbor was over 2 miles away. The dogs worked with the coordination of experienced predators. Their attacks focused on disabling their prey rather than killing quickly. They had learned patience in their previous lives, and hunger had made them methodical in their violence. The assault continued for nearly 20 minutes, with the dogs taking turns feeding on Tommy while he was still alive. His struggles grew weaker as blood loss and shock took their toll, but the animals showed no mercy. They had been conditioned to view violence as normal, hunger as constant, and humans as either threats or food sources. By the time the dogs— I've read accounts of animals turning on their owners, but Tommy's story always struck me. His body lay broken, partially consumed by the very guard dogs he used to protect his illegal puppy mill operation. Those dogs, driven by hunger, finished him. His remains went undiscovered for 3 weeks, a horrifying feast for the animals he had exploited. The rest of his operation collapsed, with dogs trapped in kennels dying of starvation. The stench of death eventually led authorities to uncover the unimaginable horror: scattered remains, dozens of dead and dying dogs. The surviving guard dogs were shot on sight due to their aggression. The investigation revealed the full scope of Tommy's cruelty: breeding females in deplorable conditions, puppies dying from neglect, and financial records showing he sold sick animals across state lines. The surviving dogs were euthanized, their health and conditioning beyond repair. Tommy's death ended one of Missouri's largest puppy mills, but the cost was immense. He became a victim of his own cruelty. Then, on August 22, 2014, in the exclusive Cypress Point community on the edge of the Florida Everglades, the heat was intense. This gated development, built on reclaimed wetlands with artificial lakes, was a symbol of luxury living in South Florida. Roberto Mendez, a 35-year-old landscaper, worked alone to maintain the pristine grounds. He had built his company from nothing, serving the wealthiest communities. He took pride in his work, supporting his wife and 2 young children through long hours in the Florida heat. Cypress Point was constructed on former Everglades wetlands, with a system of decorative ponds connected to natural waterways. The artificial lakes were stocked with ornamental fish requiring constant maintenance. Recent heavy rains had raised water levels, creating ideal conditions for wildlife movement. Roberto was familiar with Florida's wildlife, respecting the alligators, snakes, and other dangerous animals he encountered. He always checked water features carefully before working near them. But on this afternoon, while trimming bushes around a pond, his hedge trimmer slipped and fell into the shallow water. American alligators are ambush predators, perfectly camouflaged and able to remain motionless for hours. Adult females can measure 8 to 10 feet and weigh up to 200 pounds, possessing incredible speed and power. They are most dangerous when protecting nests or when surprised. Their bite force exceeds 2,000 pounds per square inch, and their death roll is designed to drown prey. Roberto waded into the knee-deep pond to retrieve his trimmer, assuming it was safe. It appeared peaceful, with no visible signs of wildlife. He had worked around similar features hundreds of times. But the moment his feet touched the muddy bottom, a 10-foot female alligator exploded into action, clamping her powerful jaws on Roberto's right leg. The bite instantly fractured his tibia and fibula, her teeth puncturing arteries and muscle tissue. The alligator initiated her signature death roll, spinning rapidly in the water while maintaining her crushing grip. The violent rotation pulled Roberto into the deeper center of the pond. His desperate attempts to break free only triggered the alligator's instincts to bite harder and roll more aggressively. Roberto's screams echoed across the manicured grounds as the alligator continued her relentless death roll. The spinning motion dislocated his knee and hip, causing massive internal bleeding and tissue damage. The pond's clear water turned red as Roberto's struggles weakened. A homeowner heard the cries and rushed to investigate. I've spent years studying the intersection of humans and the natural world, and some stories still haunt me. Take, for example, the case of Roberto. Just imagine witnessing the final moments of an attack like that. The alligator dragging him into the deepest part of the pond, his desperate attempts to reach the surface thwarted by the reptile's grip. He drowned within minutes, the massive blood loss and trauma simply overwhelming his system. Emergency responders arrived within 15 minutes of the homeowner's 911 call, but it was already too late. Wildlife officers worked for hours to safely capture the 10-foot female alligator, which had retreated into the pond's vegetation. After her attack, the reptile was relocated to a remote area of the Everglades, far from human populations. The investigation revealed that the ornamental pond's connection to natural waterways had allowed the large alligator to enter the residential area undetected. Roberto's death prompted immediate changes to Cypress Point's water feature management, including the installation of barriers between decorative ponds and natural drainage systems, and new safety protocols for maintenance workers. Then there's the story of Tara Whitfield. It was March 22, 2017, when she arrived at the Neptune Islands off the coast of South Australia, one of the world's premier great white shark diving destinations. These remote, rocky outcrops jutted from the Southern Ocean, surrounded by crystal-clear waters that plunged to depths of over 200 feet. These nutrient-rich waters served as a natural highway for migrating great whites, drawing the massive predators to hunt the abundant seal colonies. Tara Whitfield, a 38-year-old marine biology graduate student from Los Angeles, had booked the most expensive shark cage diving package available and immediately began making unreasonable demands. Known for her entitled attitude and belief that money could buy her anything, she had already berated Captain Steve Morrison and marine biologist Dr. Lisa Chen multiple times during the morning briefing. Her boyfriend, Brad Mitchell, watched uncomfortably as Tara screamed at the crew for what she called their pathetic safety restrictions. Captain Morrison, with 18 years of experience operating in these dangerous waters, had dealt with difficult clients before. But Tara's aggressive behavior and complete lack of empathy alarmed him. She repeatedly demanded that the protective cage be removed entirely, claiming she had paid premium prices and deserved unrestricted access to the sharks. When Dr. Lisa Chen attempted to explain the life-threatening dangers, Tara dismissed her as an incompetent employee who was clearly jealous of successful people. Tara had convinced herself that her graduate student status and expensive booking fee entitled her to special treatment. She threatened to destroy the company's reputation online and file lawsuits if the crew didn't provide her with the extreme experience she demanded. Her complete disregard for safety became evident when she suggested that crew members should enter the water first to test whether the sharks were dangerous. The waters around Neptune Islands hosted some of the largest great white sharks on Earth, apex predators that had ruled these seas for over 400 million years. These magnificent hunters can reach lengths of over 20 feet and weights exceeding 4,000 pounds, with massive triangular heads housing rows of razor-sharp serrated teeth. Each tooth measures up to 3 inches in length and is designed to slice through flesh and bone with devastating efficiency. Great whites possess the most powerful bite force of any living creature, capable of exerting over 4,000 pounds per square inch of crushing press. The crew had successfully attracted multiple great white sharks using a carefully prepared chum mixture. Among the responding predators was a massive 18-foot female estimated to weigh over 4,000 pounds that had been feeding aggressively on the bait. The enormous shark displayed classic hunting behaviors, circling the boat with calculated precision while investigating the steel diving cage. Before entering the water, Tara secretly loosened the connections on her diving regulator, planning to create a fake equipment malfunction that would justify exiting the protective cage. She believed she was clever enough to manipulate the situation to get the unrestricted shark access she felt entitled to. Once submerged in the protective cage, Tara immediately began signaling fake distress to the surface crew, pointing frantically at her sabotaged regulator. Captain Morrison initiated emergency procedures to bring her to the surface, but instead of ascending, Tara swam away from the cage toward the feeding sharks, believing her superior intelligence made her invulnerable. Her erratic swimming movements created the exact type of distressed prey behavior that triggers great white hunting instincts. The massive female great white detected Tara's panicked swimming immediately and abandoned the chum bait to investigate this new potential prey. The enormous predator approached from below at speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour. The shark's assault was swift and devastating. Rising from the depths like a living torpedo, the great white struck Tara from below with tremendous force, its massive jaws opening to reveal rows of gleaming serrated teeth. The impact drove Tara upward as the shark's jaws clamped down around her torso with bone-crushing press. The razor-sharp teeth sliced through her wetsuit and deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite force of 4,000 pounds per square inch shattered Tara's ribcage instantly, puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels throughout her torso. The shark's powerful jaw muscles continued applying press, while its head thrashed violently from side to side, the signature feeding behavior that allows great whites to tear away large chunks of flesh. The violent shaking motion severed Tara's body at the waist, separating her upper and lower torso. I've often thought about the belief that we can control nature. I remember reading about a shark cage diving incident where that illusion was shattered in the most brutal way imaginable. Tara, driven by what some called an entitled belief that money could override natural predator behavior, deliberately sabotaged equipment and violated safety protocols. Massive amounts of blood clouded the water as a shark consumed portions of her body. She died within seconds from massive blood loss, traumatic shock, and the destruction of vital organs. The aftermath brought stricter regulations and lawsuits, but nothing could bring her back. It was March 22, 2015, in Alabama, where the sun beat down on Harold Thompson's property. Barking echoed from kennels scattered across 5 acres of red dirt. At 71, Hank, as he was known, moved slowly between the enclos, carrying water. He had the confidence that came from 20 years of dog breeding. He and his wife Martha had built their operation from nothing, specializing in Rottweilers and German Shepherds. What had started as a hobby had grown into a modest business with 8 breeding females and 3 males, producing litters they sold across the Southeast. But age had made Hank careless about safety protocols. In his younger days, he never would have entered a kennel alone. especially with breeding males during territorial phases. He'd seen what these dogs could do, the power in their jaws, the speed of their attacks. But experience had bred overconfidence. The centerpiece of their operation was Brutus, a 130-pound Rottweiler whose massive frame made him their most sought-after stud. At 4 years old, he was in his prime, with a bloodline tracing back to German working dogs. His offspring commanded premium prices from buyers seeking protection animals. Recently, Brutus had been showing increased aggression. A minor injury to his left rear leg had left him limping and irritable, causing him to snap at Martha when she tried to examine the wound. The veterinarian had prescribed pain medication, but the dog's temperament had grown increasingly unpredictable. Martha had expressed concerns about Hank working alone with Brutus, especially given the dog's recent mood changes, but Hank dismissed her worries with stubborn confidence. He'd raised Brutus from a puppy and believed their bond was unbreakable. On that March afternoon, Martha had driven into town for supplies, leaving Hank alone with the dogs. The kennels needed cleaning. Water bowls required filling. Work Hank had done thousands of times before. Brutus watched from his kennel as Hank approached, the dog's dark eyes tracking every movement with an intensity that should have served as a warning. The animal was panting heavily despite the shade, his injured leg causing him to shift uncomfortably. Pain has a way of making even docile animals unpredictable, and Brutus was far from docile. Hank unlocked the kennel gate and stepped inside, bucket in hand, his attention focused on the dirty water bowl in the corner. He'd performed this routine hundreds of times, but today, Brutus was different. The dog's ears were pinned back, his tail held low, his massive body coiled with tension. As Hank bent down to clean the water bowl, his back turned to the dog, Brutus made his decision. There was no growling, no warning, just 130 pounds of muscle launching through the air with devastating force. The impact drove Hank face first into the concrete floor, his bucket clattering away as Brutus's jaws found their target. The dog's teeth sank deep into Hank's throat, crushing his windpipe and severing major blood vessels in a single catastrophic bite. Hank's hands clawed desperately at the animal's massive head, but Brutus had locked on with predatory determination. The dog's powerful neck muscles allowed him to shake violently, tearing through tissue and bone with mechanical efficiency. Hank's screams were cut short by the damage to his throat, replaced by a wet, gurgling sound that grew weaker by the second. Blood pooled beneath his body as Brutus continued his attack, driven by instincts bred into his lineage for generations. The assault lasted less than 3 minutes, but the damage was irreversible. When Brutus finally released his grip, Hank lay motionless on the kennel floor, his life ebbing away in the Alabama heat. Martha returned home 2 hours later to find the property strangely quiet. She called out for Hank as she walked toward the kennels but received no response. When she rounded the corner and saw Brutus standing guard over her husband's body, the full horror became clear. The dog's reaction to Martha's presence was immediate and threatening. He positioned himself between her and Hank's body, his lips pulled back in a snarl. Martha backed away slowly, dialing 911 from her truck. Sheriff's deputies arrived within 20 minutes, but Brutus refused to allow anyone near Hank's body. After consulting with animal control, the decision was made to shoot Brutus rather than risk additional casualties. The massive Rottweiler died with 3 bullets in his chest. The investigation concluded that Hank's death was a tragic accident caused by his failure to recognize warning signs of an aggressive, injured animal. The breeding operation was shut down, the remaining dogs relocated, and Martha was left to grieve both her husband and the animal that had been part of their family. It was September 3, 2013, near the Toklat River in Denali National Park, Alaska. By early afternoon, the wind had dropped and the landscape stood still, open and silent. From a distance, it looked calm, a place where nothing could happen quickly. But the quiet there was deceptive. Sarah Miller, 26, was an experienced backpacker from Anchorage. She was known for her, "I've always been drawn to stories of survival, especially those that end in tragedy. There's something about facing the raw power of nature that both terrifies and fascinates me." The case of Sarah, a seasoned hiker in Denali National Park, is one that I've revisited many times in my mind. She was experienced, prepared, and yet Sarah was a minimalist, carrying only what she trusted and relying on her skills. Her plan was a 2-day loop near the Tlat River, timed to coincide with the caribou migration. Wolves, you see, often trailed these herds. She had bear spray, a GPS beacon, and enough food for 2 nights. Solo travel didn't intimidate her. She'd been doing it for years, documenting her routes for small hiking blogs. She had properly filed for the required Denali backcountry permits. Rangers later recalled she had asked about late-season wolf movements but showed no concern when told sightings had increased near the river corridor. Wolves had been following caribou herds migrating south, and fresh tracks had been noted just days earlier. To Sarah, it was just part of the environment, one she respected but didn't fear. Wolves in that region averaged between 70 and 100 pounds. They were built for endurance and speed, capable of covering 40 miles in a day, their jaws delivering a bite force of nearly 400 pounds per square inch, strong enough to crush bone. They rarely approach people, though, living mostly on caribou, hares, and ground squirrels. But when prey grew scarce or human scent carried traces of food, curiosity sometimes lingered. That week, rangers had posted advisories near trailheads, noting that several hikers had reported wolves trailing them at a distance. Sarah had likely read those postings when she signed out, though no record showed she changed her route. Her confidence in her precautions was understandable. Statistically, Denali's wolves avoided confrontation. Around 4 p.m., a passing tourist group in a vehicle on the park road spotted a lone figure standing on a gravel bar below the ridge. The hiker waved, later confirmed by clothing and timing to be Sarah, before continuing upstream toward the area where her camp was located. She reached her final GPS coordinate sometime before 4:45 p.m. The last photos on her recovered camera showed wide shots of the river valley and a small group of wolves following a caribou herd in the mid-distance. Tracks found later indicated she moved off the main gravel bar toward higher ground, likely planning to cut inland. The first sign of struggle began about half a mile from her tent. Her GPS unit recorded erratic movement, rapid looping, then a sudden stop. Investigators reconstructed what happened next through physical evidence and predator behavior analysis. The wolves had diverted toward her position once the herd passed out of sight. Sarah likely saw them at a distance, deploying her bear spray once. Residue was detected on nearby vegetation. Wind readings that afternoon showed a westward shift, causing partial blowback of the spray mist. It worked briefly, driving the wolves about 20 feet back before the cloud dispersed. They began to circle again, emboldened by the fading chemical scent. One flank of the group approached from behind, following her retreat up a shallow embankment. Handprints pressed deep into the soil showed she climbed in haste. Blood marks began at the top of the slope. One wolf had likely lunged first, grabbing her backpack or arm. The straps were torn clean through, consistent with a pulling force rather than a cut. A second wolf joined, aiming lower, its bite breaking the skin along her thigh. She tried to fight back. The spray canister lay spent beside her pack, but the group coordinated, one attacking from the rear, the others darting forward. The ground at the site was churned with soil and hair, suggesting several minutes of movement before she was forced down. Analysis of tissue marks later revealed crushing bites to the neck and shoulder, consistent with a killing grip, the kind wolves use to suffocate large prey. Her jacket was shredded, and the torn sleeve, recovered 20 feet away, still held fragments of skin and fabric. Search efforts began that night, with both ground crews and a helicopter dispatched after rangers noted her vehicle unmoved. The aircraft spotted a disturbed patch of gravel near the Tlat Channel the next morning. Sarah's body lay partially covered by soil and debris, her left arm missing, likely carried off by scavengers after the attack. They collected the camera and other items for analysis and later confirmed through timestamps that her final photograph was taken just 6 minutes before the estimated time of death. The park temporarily closed multiple backcountry zones along the migration corridor. Genetic sampling confirmed the wolves belonged to the Tolat pack. Investigators determined the attack began as a predatory test or prey proxy response that escalated fatally, but with no repeated approach or food-seeking behavior observed, no removals were ordered. At a private debrief, rangers explained the findings to Sarah's parents, who later issued a short statement urging that the park not punish what it protects. It was April 14, 2018, when Monica Barrett arrived at Everglades National Park in Florida, one of the largest tropical wilderness areas in the United States. The vast wetland ecosystem stretched across 1.5 million acres of sawgrass marshes and shallow waterways that served as home to some of North America's most dangerous predators. The park's intricate network of channels created the perfect habitat for massive American alligators. Monica Barrett, a 44-year-old divorce attorney from Miami, had booked a solo kayak tour to clear her head after a difficult custody case. Known for her aggressive courtroom tactics and confrontational personality, she had built her legal career on intimidating opponents and refusing to back down from any challenge. Her reputation for getting her way through sheer force of will had created a dangerous sense of entitlement. Tommy Rodriguez, a 52-year-old tour guide with over 20 years of experience, had immediately recognized Monica as a problematic client during the morning safety briefing. She had interrupted his presentation. I've always been fascinated by the power that apex predators hold, a power honed over millennia. The American alligator, with its 3,000 pounds per square inch of crushing pres, is a prime example. I find myself thinking about Monica, who, despite warnings, ventured into a restricted lagoon during peak alligator breeding season. It's a tragic story, and one that underscores the importance of respecting the boundaries of nature. Tommy, the tour guide, had warned Monica repeatedly about the dangers, especially with it being active alligator nesting season. He explained that the park had posted numerous signs around known nesting sites, indicating that territorial males were guarding their offspring with deadly aggression. But she accused him of limiting her constitutional rights, even threatening legal action. She broke away from the group, paddling her kayak toward a restricted lagoon, determined to investigate some wildlife activity. She felt she had every right as a tax-paying citizen to explore any area of the national park. That lagoon was a primary nesting area for a massive 12-foot bull alligator who had been actively defending his territory for 3 weeks. The 800-pound reptile had already driven off several smaller males. The presence of Monica's kayak immediately triggered the alligator's most aggressive instincts. Almost instantly, the bull alligator detected the vibrations from her paddle strokes. The reptile, perfectly camouflaged beneath the surface, launched itself from the water with explosive force. Its massive jaws clamped down on the front of Monica's kayak, capsizing it and throwing her into the murky water. Disoriented and panicked, Monica struggled in the water. The alligator immediately identified her as a threat to his nesting territory. Its jaws found purchase on her torso, razor-sharp teeth puncturing through her life jacket, deep into her chest and abdomen. The crushing bite shattered multiple ribs instantly, puncturing both lungs and severing major blood vessels. Then came the death roll, a violent spinning motion designed to disorient prey and cause massive internal trauma. The 800-pound reptile rotated rapidly in the water, spinning Monica's body while maintaining its crushing grip. The violent rotation generated tremendous force, tearing muscles and causing catastrophic internal injuries. The death roll continued for over a minute. Her punctured lungs filled with water, and the crushing press prevented any possibility of breathing. Her shattered ribs ground against each other, causing additional internal bleeding. The combination of massive internal trauma, drowning, and blood loss proved fatal within minutes. Monica's struggles gradually ceased as the alligator continued its death roll. The massive reptile eventually released her lifeless body, which floated to the surface. Tommy immediately radioed for emergency assistance, but rescue teams couldn't reach the remote lagoon in time. It was May 14, 2017. In contrast, the ancient mountains of Great Smoky Mountains National Park are majestically above the Tennessee landscape. The late spring afternoon was perfect for hiking, with golden sunlight filtering through the dense canopy of oak, maple, and hickory trees, while wildflowers carpeted the forest floor in brilliant colors. Sarah Johnson, a 29-year-old registered nurse from Atlanta, was enjoying a weekend hiking trip with her fiancé, Tom, exploring the park's trails and taking photos to commemorate their engagement celebration. Sarah had always loved nature photography. Her medical background had given her a practical understanding of emergency situations, but her experience with dangerous wildlife was limited. She had been hiking throughout the Southeast for over 5 years, building her confidence and wilderness skills through countless weekend adventures with Tom. She worked long shifts at Grady Hospital's emergency department, and these mountain getaways provided essential stress relief from her demanding career, saving lives in one of Atlanta's busiest trauma centers. That afternoon, Sarah and Tom were hiking through a remote alpine meadow when they discovered something extraordinary. 2 black bear cubs playing in the tall grass, their mother nowhere in sight. Sarah immediately recognized this as a once-in-a-lifetime photo opportunity. Black bears are the most common bear species in North America, but it's a fact I've learned to respect. Mother bears with cubs are exponentially more aggressive than solitary individuals. They will attack without warning to defend their young. They view any human presence near their cubs as a mortal threat, and they are incredibly strong and fast, capable of running up to 30 miles through dense forest. I've read accounts of how a woman named Sarah found this out in the most tragic way imaginable during what should have been an incredible engagement trip. Sarah started taking pictures of some bear cubs from what she thought was a safe distance, but caught up in the excitement of capturing such rare footage, she gradually moved closer to get better shots. Her fiancé, Tom, kept telling her to keep her distance and leave, but she was the mother bear wasn't anywhere nearby. The cubs were just playing, wrestling and tumbling through the meadow grass as Sarah documented their every move. Her photography session went on for almost 10 minutes. She took dozens of pictures. And here's where the fatal mistake happened. Sarah unknowingly positioned herself between the cubs and their natural escape route to the forest. As she moved to get a better angle, she blocked the path the cubs would take to reach safety if they felt threatened. This triggered the protective instincts of their mother, who had been watching from the tree line. The mother bear's charge from the forest was swift and terrifying. The 200-pound female covered the distance to Sarah in seconds. Her powerful legs propelled her massive frame with surprising speed. Her fury focused entirely on eliminating the perceived threat to her cubs. Sarah tried to run when she saw the bear charging, but her foot caught on a fallen log, and she tumbled backward, still holding her camera. The mother bear reached her before she could get up, striking her with bone-crushing force. The bear's massive paw hit Sarah's back, her claws raking across Sarah's spine and shoulders, the impact shattering several ribs. Sarah's camera flew from her grip as the bear's enormous weight pinned her to the ground. She couldn't even call for help. The press on her chest was too great. The mother bear's powerful jaws clamped down on Sarah's neck, the crushing bite fracturing vertebrae and severing vital arteries. The bear's protective instincts drove her to continue the assault until she was certain the threat to her cubs had been completely eliminated. Within minutes, Sarah's movement ceased. The mother bear's brutal assault proved fatal. The protective mother stayed near Sarah's body for several more minutes, making the threat was neutralized before gathering her cubs and disappearing into the dense forest. Park rangers arrived over an hour later, responding to Tom's emergency call, but Sarah was already dead from massive trauma. The Bear family was tracked but left undisturbed, as wildlife officials determined the mother had been acting within normal protective behavioral patterns when defending her young. Sarah's death devastated the hiking community and led to enhanced educational programs about wildlife safety and proper distance protocols. Her family established a foundation promoting wilderness safety education, ensuring her passion for conservation would continue through enhanced protection for both wildlife and outdoor enthusiasts.